So the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Just had to double check because I messed up the intro about 5 times. So what this movie's about is this is Guy Ritchie's most recent film. If you've seen any of his movies, you kind of know what this movie's going to be like. And this movie stars Henry Cavill, Alan Ritchson, and Asa Gonzalez. And what this movie is it's kind of Guy Ritchie's little take on a spy espionage movie. Get out your notebooks, quick history lesson. So during World War II, obviously, the Germans basically controlled most of the mainland. They controlled the ocean and the Atlantic Ocean due to the fact that they had U-boats, aka submarines. And because of this, as we all know, the war was not going particularly well, especially for Britain. They're getting bombed every single night. And the US couldn't enter the war to help their call of aid because the U-boats controlled the Atlantic Passage, and we couldn't get across there to help them because the U-boats were basically shooting down all of the inventory that we were sending and all of the supplies that Britain needed to survive the war. And obviously because of this, the British government basically knows that they can't stay on this trajectory during World War II or they will lose to the Germans because they need aid, they can't get their allies to help them. And because of the stranglehold that the Germans had on the British, they couldn't really fight them straight up. They're outmanned, they didn't have the artillery they did. So they needed to kind of find a way to get a little bit of an advantage, and that's where this movie comes in. So what you have is you have this crew led by Henry Cavill, and he's kind of leading this espionage mission to hit them at their base and to take their supplies so the U-boats will have to abandon the Atlantic, leading to the US to come and help them. And obviously, if you've seen the poster or the trailer for this movie is star-packed. It's got Henry Cavill, Alan Ritchson, Asa Gonzalez. And that's immediately, to me, an incredibly strong point in this movie. The acting and the casting, absolutely great. I'm really happy that Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson are both getting more roles. I know they were both kind of like typecast as like these meatheads. They always played like the bruisers in movies, but I think they're both actually really good actors, and they're really good dudes in real life from everything I've seen. I've seen like a lot of interviews and stuff about like Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson and like how dedicated they are to actually becoming good actors, causes outside of acting, and I don't think it could happen to two better dudes, so I'm happy for their success. And I was really happy to see Henry Cavill in this role specifically. He's kind of like a smart-ass sea captain. He doesn't listen to orders. That's why he was blackballed, and they take him for this mission. And I think comedy in these movies, especially like action movies, is a lot of comedic timing. I think he has it. I think he's a good comedic actor. And can we all agree that we did not see the rise of Alan Ritchson being on the 2024 bingo card? I mean, like, he blew up because of Jack Reacher, but he was in another standalone movie a couple weeks ago. Happy to see him continue getting roles. I think he's great in this movie. He's kind of like the Beavis to the Butthead of like Henry Cavill, where they're kind of like witty bantering all the time. They're both these like super strong jockey dudes, but they're also just smart asses. And when he's not being a smartass, his character is just like the trained killer of the group, and he's just like the biggest badass in the movie. And the last of the big three that kind of carry this movie's acting is Asa Gonzalez, who's also kind of like really picked up recently due to Three Body Problem. Wasn't too familiar with a lot of her stuff, but I did really like her in the From Dusk Till Dawn TV show. Thought she was great in that. I think she kind of steals the show in this movie. She's really good. Because for one half of this movie, you have Alan Ritchson and Henry Cavill on a boat. They're kind of doing their little espionage, dudes being dudes, killing people. For the other half of this movie, it's Asa Gonzalez's character. She's kind of trying to make ground as one of the Nazi leads on land. So they're doing recon back and forth with the boat so they can continue on the mission. And the real reason why it's so important that her characters both acted good and written good is because whenever you have a movie where you have a ton of action, but you also have a slow burn like story on the other half, you really run the risk of half of the movie being very engaging and entertaining and the other half being boring, but this movie avoids that. It's a bit similar to The Beekeeper earlier this year. Like I said, I really liked that movie, but it was kind of like a ton of action that was great. And then these like cops, they kind of like, it was like whenever they were not on the screen, I was like, put Jason Statham back on. This movie, you don't really feel like you need to see the dudes. I mean, they're obviously the better part of the movie, but you don't really hate the scenes where they're not on screen. And the other major thing, if not mentioned already, is that this is a Guy Ritchie movie. So if you've seen any of his movies, you kind of know what you're getting into with this, where it's going to be like a serious movie, but a lot of like comic relief, dry humor. And immediately when watching this movie, I thought he was the perfect guy to make a movie like this, because if it didn't have the comic relief, it could really have been a very dry, like World War II movie that was just kind of like heavy on the story. But the comic relief really makes it light enough that you're really just on board with everything. Because that really is another major thing about this movie. I thought this movie was very funny. Like, I laughed out loud about 5 to 10 times in the theater. My theater was cracking up. They were clapping. I thought the comic relief, the jokes, the way they deliver the major lines, I thought it all landed. I thought the blend was perfect. I thought it was like just the right amount of comic relief to not take me out of the fact it's an action movie. And I thought when you finally get to the third act of this movie, when you're kind of deep in it, the mission's progressing, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the visuals were really good. You got a lot of explosions. You got a lot of hand fights with knives. You got a lot of gunfire. You got a bunch of laughs. I just thought it was a really good time. And I was actually kind of surprised by the fact that this movie's so story heavy when you're not with the dudes, and I was never really bored. I was completely engaged in the story. I thought it was told in a funny way. I mean, it could have been really dry if they didn't write the characters to be the way they were, but I don't know. I don't watch an incredible amount of war movies, but I thought this was a really good one. So to me, this movie was really a big surprise. It had a little bit of everything. I mean, it had good acting. Cinematography is beautiful. I thought it had really good combat fight scenes, some really good laughs. If you like spy movies, you'll be entertained. You like action movies, you'll be entertained. You like Guy Ritchie movies, you'll really like this one. So yeah, if I was talking to somebody about the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, I'd have to say, I thought it was a damn good time, and I'd buy it. Didn't know too much about this movie going in, but pleasantly surprised, always take that. So if you've somehow managed to see this already too, comment down below, let me know, and if not, let me know if you're gonna go see it. And if you haven't seen it yet or you don't plan on seeing it, comment down below, let me know what your favorite Guy Ritchie movie is. I just keep going back in my head to how hard it is to say this title without slipping over my tongue. I feel like I'm in a giant tongue twister. And as always, I'm going to put a link to all my other 2024 reviews up here if you want to see any of the other stuff I've droned on about throughout the year. If you haven't subbed already, do it. Come on, what are you waiting for? Other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.